5 signs God is activating your calling right now. There comes a moment in a believer's life when you can sense it clearly. God is not only working in you anymore, He is getting ready to work through you. The rhythm of your days hasn't changed much on the outside, but inside, something is waking up. That shift is not random. It's your calling being activated. In the first message of this series, we talked about that holy moment when God calls your name, when you realize you are seen, chosen, and invited into His story. In the second, we looked at how He expands your territory, stretching your character, your capacity, and your compassion so you can carry more of His heart. Now we step into the next stage, what it looks like when God begins to switch that calling on in real time. This is where the gifts He planted in you start to come alive, where your ordinary routines begin to carry eternal weight, and where your life stops feeling accidental and starts feeling assigned. 2 Timothy 1:6 says, "Fan into flame the gift of God which is in you." The flame is already there. God is simply breathing on it. When He activates your calling, He doesn't erase your personality or your story. He aligns them. Your past, your talents, your scars, your season. All of it starts to fit into His purpose. Today we're going to look at 5 clear signs that this activation is happening right now. Because you were not called just to make it through life. You were called to shine, to build, to serve, and to carry God's presence into every place He sends you. And when that calling comes alive, nothing about your journey stays ordinary again. Part 1. You feel a holy restlessness. One of the clearest signs that God is activating your calling is that your heart no longer fits inside the old shape of your life. The same routine, the same conversations, the same goals you used to be satisfied with suddenly seem unfinished. You still care about your responsibilities. You are still grateful for what you have. But deep inside, there is a gentle restlessness that will not fade. This is not the restlessness of anxiety or exhaustion. It is not the feeling that everything is wrong. It is more like a quiet inner pull, as if God is taking you by the hand and saying, "There is more." In Isaiah chapter 43, verse 19, God says, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it?" The new thing does not start when you see it with your eyes. It begins when God stirs it in your spirit. Maybe you have noticed this in simple ways. You finish a normal day and sense a small whisper inside saying, "You were made for more than just getting through the week." You sit in church, and instead of only listening, you feel a pull to step in, to serve, to encourage someone. You talk with a person who is hurting, and something in you wakes up. You realize how alive you feel when you help another soul come closer to hope. That quiet awakening is not a mood swing. It is a sign that your calling is beginning to move from theory into experience. We see a picture of this in Gideon. When we first meet him in the book of Judges, he is threshing wheat in a hidden place, just trying to get by. On the outside, he is surviving, but inside he is not at peace with seeing his people live in fear and defeat. Something in him knows this is not how the story is meant to end. When the angel of the Lord appears and calls him mighty warrior, heaven is naming what has already been stirring in his heart. His unease was not rebellion. It was an echo of his true identity. Perhaps you are in a similar place. You are doing what you have always done, but it no longer feels like the whole picture. You are not running away from your life, but you know you cannot stay exactly as you are. There is a new compassion growing in you, a new desire to invest your time and energy into things that carry eternal weight. You might even feel a little awkward trying to explain this to others. That is all right. God often awakens your heart before He explains the details. If this is where you find yourself, do not rush to silence the feeling. Do not call it ingratitude and push it down. Instead, Bring it into conversation with God. You can simply pray, Lord, thank you for this holy stirring. Show me what you are preparing me for. When you treat your restlessness as a gift instead of a problem, it begins to guide you instead of frustrate you. It becomes a gentle compass that points your attention toward the people and places where God is already at work. Holy restlessness is a sign that you have outgrown certain fears and limitations, and even certain versions of yourself. It means God trusts you enough to stretch you. He is enlarging your inner world so your outer life can carry more of His purpose. You may not see the full path yet, but you do not need to. Your part is to stay responsive. Pay attention to the moments when your spirit comes alive in a pure and peaceful way. Notice where you feel the deepest joy when you serve. In those places, you will often find the first footprints of the calling God is activating in you. Part 2. God starts opening unexpected doors. When God begins to activate your calling, one of the first things you will notice is that doors start opening in ways you could never plan. Not because you pushed, and not because you earned it, but because God decided the time was right. It might be a new opportunity, a new conversation, or even a new person crossing your path at the exact moment you needed them. These are not accidents. They are divine appointments written long before you arrived. Revelation chapter 3, verse 8 says, "See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut." When God opens a door, it is not fragile. It does not depend on your strength to hold it open. You do not have to beg for it, compete for it, or manipulate anything to make it happen. The same hand that opens it will keep it steady until you are ready to walk through. Think about Peter on the day of Pentecost. He did not plan a grand event. He was simply waiting and praying as Jesus had told him. Then suddenly, the Spirit of God filled the room. The crowd gathered, and a fisherman who once hid in fear began to speak with power. The door to his calling opened in a single moment, and all he had to do was step through it. That is how divine timing works. Quiet preparation followed by a clear invitation. Sometimes, these doors appear in small ways. A message that leads to a meaningful connection. A project that unexpectedly matches your gifts. A friend who encourages you to take a step you had been too hesitant to take. You look back later and realize how perfectly it all fit together. God's fingerprints are always clearer in hindsight, but they are already there in every detail. There will also be moments when an open door feels too big or too soon. You may think, I am not ready for this. That is exactly what makes it holy. God rarely waits until you feel ready. He opens doors to stretch your faith, not to flatter your confidence. When He invites you forward, He is not testing your ability. He is confirming your availability. The question is not, do I deserve this? It is simply, will I trust Him enough to walk through? Years ago, a friend told me that his career changed after one small act of obedience. He felt a quiet nudge to volunteer for a role he had never done before. It seemed insignificant, but he did it anyway. Within months, that experience led him to a position that perfectly aligned with his passion for mentoring others. He told me later, I thought I was taking a small step, but God was actually opening a big door. That is what happens when you move with Him instead of waiting for everything to make sense. Maybe right now, you are standing in front of such a door. It might not look glamorous. It might not even look spiritual, but something about it feels right. Peaceful, purposeful, and timely. Pay attention to that sense of peace. That is how God confirms that a door is from Him. The right door will never require you to compromise your integrity or silence your faith. It may challenge your comfort, but it will never confuse your spirit. So if new opportunities have started to unfold, don't shrink back in fear. Don't talk yourself out of what God is trying to bring you into. Pray over it. Ask for wisdom. Then walk forward with humility and courage. Because when God opens a door, He already knows what waits on the other side, and every step you take through it brings you closer to the purpose He designed you to fulfill. Part 3. Your gifts start flowing naturally. When God activates your calling, something begins to shift in the way your gifts work. What once felt forced now starts to flow. Things that used to require so much effort begin to happen with peace, not pressure. It is not that life becomes easy, but that grace begins to carry you in places where strength used to struggle. You start to realize that you are not striving anymore. You are partnering. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10 says, "Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace." That means your abilities were never random. They were placed there for a purpose. And when that purpose comes alive, your gifts stop being tasks and start becoming expressions of love. The energy shifts from, "I have to do this," to "I get to do this." You might see this in simple ways. Maybe you find yourself speaking encouragement more naturally than before. Maybe you notice that people begin to seek your presence because they feel peace around you. Or perhaps you are finally using a talent that once felt insignificant, and now it blesses others without you even trying. That is how activation works. It connects the Spirit's power with your everyday life. I remember meeting a woman who used to tremble every time she had to speak in front of people. She loved God deeply but believed her fear disqualified her. One day she was asked to share a short testimony in her small group. She hesitated, prayed, and decided to step out. As she spoke, something surprising happened. Her fear turned into clarity. Her words carried warmth and weight. People cried. Afterwards she said, "I didn't even feel like I was the one speaking." That is what it feels like when God's gift starts to flow. It is still your voice, but His presence gives it life. Sometimes we think using our gifts means performing or impressing, but true calling does not draw attention to you. It draws people closer to God. When the Spirit moves, you do not have to force impact. The fruit shows up naturally. It is not noise or spectacle. It is quiet transformation happening in real time, and that is what makes it sacred. It remains humble and human, yet undeniably divine. If you are noticing new ease in something that used to drain you, pay attention. If your compassion is growing deeper, your creativity brighter, your patience stronger, that is God's signal that your calling is taking shape. The same Spirit who called you is now working through you. You are becoming a vessel of grace rather than a worker of effort. Do not be afraid of this new rhythm. Sometimes, people struggle to accept that God can truly use them. They keep expecting the old weight to return. But once grace begins to flow, you are not meant to go back to striving. Let yourself move with it. Trust that if God gave you this flow, He also knows how to sustain it. You do not have to control it. You simply need to stay connected to Him. When your gift is activated, it feels like breathing again after holding your breath. It brings peace, clarity, and purpose all at once. You stop comparing, stop competing, and start contributing. You realize that your life is no longer about trying to be impressive. It is about being available. And as you walk in that freedom, people around you will notice something different. They may not have words for it, but they will feel it. The evidence that the Spirit of God is alive and working through you. Part 4. You begin to face spiritual resistance. Whenever God begins to activate a calling, resistance often follows. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because you are finally doing something right. The closer you move toward your purpose, the more the enemy wants to distract or discourage you. But the good news is this: Resistance is not a sign of failure. It is a confirmation that heaven has started to move through you. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12 reminds us, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers and powers of this dark world. That means the battle is not with people or circumstances. It is spiritual. The enemy cannot stop what God has begun, but he can try to make you doubt it. He whispers thoughts of fear, exhaustion, or unworthiness. He plants small lies that say you are not ready, you are not strong enough, nothing is changing. But every time you choose faith over fear, that lie loses its grip. Think of Nehemiah rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. The moment he started, opposition appeared, mockery, threats, exhaustion, yet he never quit. He prayed, adjusted, and kept building. The wall was finished because his focus was on God, not on the noise. That story teaches us that resistance is not meant to stop us. It is meant to strengthen our focus. Every attack becomes an opportunity to grow in endurance, humility, and discernment. You may have felt it too. The moment you began serving faithfully, conflict suddenly appeared. When you started praying more, distractions multiplied. When you stepped into your calling, unexpected criticism came. Do not be surprised. That pressure is proof that your obedience is shaking something in the spiritual realm. The enemy does not waste energy fighting those who are standing still. The key is not to panic, but to stay anchored. When challenges rise, return to the presence of God quickly. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening?" ask, "What are you teaching me here, Lord?" Sometimes the resistance is revealing an area where you need stronger roots. Other times it is simply confirming that you are advancing in the right direction. Either way, you can walk through it with peace, knowing that God allows pressure only when He plans to produce strength. I once spoke with a young man who began leading worship at his church. The first few weeks were beautiful, but soon after, unexpected tension arose, technical problems, misunderstandings, and self-doubt. He told me, "I thought I was losing the anointing." I smiled and said, "No, you are growing into it." The battle increased because the impact increased. That realization changed everything. He began to see resistance, not as punishment, but as training for deeper maturity. When God activates your calling, He does not remove every obstacle. He teaches you to rise above them. You start learning how to pray through conflict instead of escaping it, how to bless those who misunderstand you, how to keep your heart soft while your faith stays firm. And little by little, the resistance that once scared you becomes the very environment that refines you. If you are feeling that tension now, take courage. The storm around you is not stronger than the spirit within you. You do not have to fight for victory. You fight from victory. Every trial you endure with faith adds weight to your testimony. Every challenge you overcome builds spiritual authority. And as you stay faithful, you will notice something powerful. What once felt like opposition becomes confirmation that God's hand is truly on your life. So do not retreat when the wind rises. Stand your ground with peace. Keep building. Keep believing. Because if the enemy is fighting you this hard, it is only because he knows something heaven already declared. You are stepping into your divine assignment, and you are not going back. Part 5. You sense a deeper dependence on God. When God activates your calling, something beautiful happens inside you. You begin to realize that the only way forward is with Him. It is not about trying harder, planning smarter, or doing more. It is about walking closer. The more He entrusts to you, the more you understand that strength without His presence is empty. True calling is not built on confidence. It is built on connection. Jesus said in John chapter 15 verse 5, "Apart from me, "You can do nothing." Those words are not meant to discourage us. They are an invitation to peace. When you depend on God deeply, you stop carrying the weight of outcomes on your own shoulders. You no longer wake up wondering if you have enough to succeed. You wake up knowing that grace will meet you wherever obedience takes you. I remember a pastor once saying, "When I first started preaching, I prepared with pressure. But as the years went on, I learned to prepare with prayer." That shift changed everything. It was not that he became less diligent. He simply became more dependent. He realized that what changes lives is not polish, but presence. The same is true for every believer. When you rely on the Spirit instead of your skill, your work becomes lighter, purer, and more powerful. As your calling grows, you will feel this shift. You will pray differently. Not just asking God to bless your plans, but asking Him to shape them. You will listen more, rush less. You will find yourself pausing before decisions, sensing the quiet guidance of the Holy Spirit. And even when you feel unsure, there will be a calm assurance beneath the surface, a confidence that does not come from knowing the path, but from knowing the one who leads it. Dependence on God is not weakness. It is wisdom. It means you understand that divine work requires divine strength. Moses learned this when he said, "If your presence does not go with us, do not send us from here." He knew that without God's presence, even success would feel hollow. But with His presence, even the wilderness became holy ground. That is the kind of dependence that turns ordinary people into instruments of heaven. You may also notice that as your reliance on God deepens, your inner peace grows. The pressure to perform starts to fade. You stop comparing your pace to others because you realize your journey is custom-made by grace. You no longer chase results. You follow relationship. And every time you see God's hand guiding you through what once felt impossible, your trust grows stronger. It becomes your greatest asset. Stronger than talent, louder than fear, steadier than emotion. I once met a woman who led a small ministry for the elderly. She told me, "I used to panic before every visit, afraid I wouldn't know what to say. But now I just pray, walk in, and let God love them through me." That is what mature dependence looks like. It is quiet, confident, and full of peace. It is knowing that you do not have to be impressive. You only need to be available. If lately you find yourself saying, "Lord, I cannot do this without you," take heart. That is not a cry of limitation. It is a sign of activation. It means you have moved beyond self-reliance into divine partnership. God is not looking for perfect people. He is looking for yielded ones. When you trust Him in every step, He turns your weakness into strength, your hesitation into testimony, and your surrender into impact. So keep leaning in. Keep drawing near. The closer you walk with Him, the clearer your calling becomes. Because at the end of the day, the greatest power of an activated life is not how much you can accomplish, but how much of His presence you carry wherever you go. Conclusion. When God activates your calling, everything about the way you see life begins to change. The familiar becomes sacred. The ordinary becomes meaningful. You start to recognize that every step, every season, and every challenge has been leading you here, to a life that carries His purpose, not just His promises. In this journey, we have seen what that activation looks like. It begins with a holy restlessness that stirs your heart. Then, God opens unexpected doors that only He could open. Your gifts begin to flow with grace instead of effort. Resistance rises, but so does your strength. And through it all, you find yourself depending on Him more deeply than ever before. These are not random experiences. They are the signs that your faith is no longer in theory. It is alive and active. Ephesians chapter 2 verse 10 says, "You are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for you to do." That means your purpose was never an afterthought. It was written before time began, and now in this moment, God is awakening it within you. Not someday, not when you feel ready, but now. If you have sensed that stirring, that movement in your spirit, don't wait for perfect clarity. Walk forward with faith. The same God who called your name and expanded your territory is now working through you. He has gone before you, preparing people, places, and opportunities that will align perfectly with your obedience. So take courage, stay humble, keep your heart open. You are not stepping into uncertainty. You are stepping into alignment. The light that once seemed far away is now shining through your own life. God is not just calling you anymore. He is partnering with you. And as you walk in that calling, you'll discover something beautiful. When His purpose flows through you, every breath, every act of kindness, and every word of faith becomes part of His plan to touch the world through your life.